In a world full of voices, blocking out the noise is vital. The Bible is clear that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Therefore, this show is dedicated to providing you with a clear sound of the Scriptures, which are inspired by the Spirit of God and passed down by apostles and prophets. I am your host, Delivering the Heat, Gerald Joseph, a preacher and avid student of the Word, and you are now listening to the Holy Fuel Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show once again. Last time when we got together, we spoke about Shiloah and how the waters of Shiloah was like the wisdom of God. And we ended on the terms of the man who was born blind. Jesus made clay out of his saliva and dirt, and he smeared it on this gentleman's eyes, and he told him to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. This is the pool that King Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, had built in order to preserve water in the city whenever they were surrounded by the Assyrians. You see, of all these places that the king of Assyria would overflow, the only city to be spared would be Jerusalem. And so he went, this blind man, he went to the pool called Siloam, and he washed and regained his sight. And what's amazing is his revelation when it came to the identity of who Jesus was. He perceived that Jesus, at the very least, came from God. And his statement was, "This thing I know, I was blind, but now I see." And in this episode, I want to really get into what blindness really is. I know you may have heard the term lost. And many times we read the New Testament and we don't realize the connection between the New and Old Testament. But I want to illustrate in this episode what it truly means to be lost. I'm entitling this episode, Lost in Conspiracy. But as you know, this method will take us on a bit of a trip. It'll take us on a journey to truly realize what it means to be lost. And so we left off even prior to speaking of the blind man at the pool of Siloam. We were speaking of King Ahaz. We were speaking of the decisions and the choices that King Ahaz made. And this time we're going to kind of pan to the northern kingdom. In Isaiah chapter 8, it says in verse 19, "And when they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards, who whisper and mutter, should not a people seek their God? Should they seek the dead on behalf of the living? To the law and to the testimony. If they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. They will pass through it hard-pressed and hungry. And it shall happen when they are hungry that they will be enraged and curse their king and their God and look upward. And then they will look to the earth and see trouble and darkness, gloom of anguish, and they will be driven into darkness." Isaiah chapter 8 begins with the Lord speaking to Isaiah. And he gives Isaiah a certain directive because Isaiah is going to have a son. However, God wants to communicate the fate of these firebrands, the fate of Rezin and Pekah, the son of Remaliah. God is illustrating to Isaiah what's about to take place. And so he tells Isaiah to get a writer's pen. And he tells him, write this in the sight of two notable witnesses. Now, here's the irony of this particular situation. You see, Isaiah is to call Zechariah and Uriah. Uriah is the priest that aided in King Ahaz's apostasy. He's the one who would receive the design of the altar that King Ahaz saw in Damascus, and he would have it built for King Ahaz before he even returns. How ironic that this wicked priest God would call to be a witness. Let me explain it to you. Because when God is about to do something, it doesn't matter who is there. It doesn't matter the circumstance. Understand, if God said it, it will indeed come to pass. And so he takes people who really would not side with Isaiah. He takes these individuals who are subpar witnesses, and they're going to witness with their own eyes and understand with their own ears that God is about to do something, and it will be unmistakable that it was God who would allow the northern kingdom to be disposed of. You see, Isaiah is to write this name. And the name that he writes is Meher Shalal Hashbaz. And what this name means is speed the spoil, hasten the booty. You see, this is going to be something that happens pretty quickly. And so it's important that there are witnesses here to see this. And God reiterates this prophetic word to Isaiah. You see, not only did he tell him to write this, but the Bible lets us know that Isaiah would have a son. And he was to name his son by the name Meher Shalal Hashbaz. And the Bible lets us know in verse 4 that before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be taken away before the king of Assyria. So God foretold that the flood was coming, and that the flood would come swiftly, and that God would allow the northern kingdom to be taken, to be captured, to be disposed of by the king of Assyria. And I can tell you, surely so, the flood came. The river swelled. It overwhelmed Syria, the northern kingdom of Israel, and it even reached to Judah. However, as we know, in the future, with King Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, Jerusalem would be spared. However, the flood would indeed go through the land of Judah as well. The Bible lets us know in 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 9, that Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, went up against Damascus, overcame them, executed King Rezin, and carried away captives to Kir. And so we see Syria, check. And the Bible also lets us know that during the time of King Pekah, the son of Remaliah, in the northern kingdom, the king of Assyria would come through the land and take Ion, Abel Beth Maacah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, and all the land of Naphtali. And he carried them captive to Assyria, according to 2 Kings 15, verse 29. Hoshea, who would later be a vassal for the king of Assyria, led a conspiracy against Pekah, the king of Israel, and executed him, according to 2 Kings 15, verse 30. And Hoshea would soon become the final king of the northern kingdom of Israel. And we find this out in 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 1. But I want to start by truly giving us an illustration of what happened. You see, this time, Shalmaneser, whether that is a title or a name, he is the king of Assyria, and he uncovers a conspiracy by Hoshea. You see, Hoshea was a vassal to the king of Assyria. That means he paid a tribute annually to Assyria. But it seems that King Hoshea wanted to get away. He wanted to cease from being a vassal. He wanted to break away from the grip of Assyria. But let me tell you something. Even though he would solicit the king of Egypt and he would forego his annual tribute to Assyria, the king of Assyria would uncover it, and he would not let him go. You see, the Bible lets us know that because of this treason, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison, according to 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 3 and 4. You see, the Bible lets us know that the flood came, and it came with vengeance. The king of Assyria would flow throughout the land of the northern kingdom. Samaria would be besieged for 3 years and captured, and the king of Assyria would carry the people of Israel away and into Assyria. And here's the reason why. It is not simply unholy alliances that goes to the root of the problem. You see, the northern kingdom of Israel had a problem. And this problem had been going on for a long time. You see, the Bible lets us know that whenever David had passed away and his son Solomon had taken the throne, that God had given Solomon great wisdom. And God thought it notable that Solomon, though he could ask for anything, would ask for wisdom. And Israel would be into his hand, but we know Solomon's end was not like his beginning. See, Solomon had a thing for the ladies, and he would adopt into Israel all the practices of all of his foreign wives and concubines. And so what begins to happen in the land of Israel is that they begin to assimilate to the nations around them, the nations that God drove out from before them. They began to adopt the practices of the nations who did not have a law, to the nations that did not have the light of the Lord, to the nations who were truly in darkness, to where Israel was called to be a light. You see, this is deeper than simply an alliance with a kingdom. This goes to an alliance with practices that God didn't condone of. This goes to the root of the problem. And it's that Israel, though they were to be a light to the nations, they would soon be plunged into darkness. See, from the time of Solomon, Israel partook in a greater conspiracy than that of Hoshea. See, Israel conspired against the Lord and solicited other gods. They solicited other practices, and the Lord vowed to tear the kingdom out of the hands of Solomon, and 10 tribes would be given to his chief, Jeroboam. You see, they committed treason by worshiping the goddess of the Sidonians, namely Ashtaroth. See, they committed treason by worshiping the god of the Moabites called Chemosh. And they committed treason by worshiping the god of the Ammonites called Milcom. And they deviated from the ways of the Lord, and they rejected his statutes. You see, from a long time ago, the northern kingdom of Israel rejected the gently flowing waters of Shiloah. And they really invited the flood of the great Euphrates, the flood of the great river that would swell every year. They invited judgment upon themselves. And God would allow exile to where this northern kingdom with 10 tribes would be displaced from their land. You see, the real problem with Israel was mingling with foreign practices, ideologies, and rituals that God would call an abomination. Their problem was not just kingdoms. Their problem was sin. You see, the Bible in 2 Kings 17 says this, "For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and they had feared other gods." That means they reverenced other gods. They didn't allow God to be their fear, but they would worship and serve these Baals, these Ashtaroths. They would worship and serve all of these foreign deities. And the Bible says, "And had walked in the statutes of the nations, whom the Lord had cast out from before the children of Israel and of the kings of Israel, which they had made." You see, not only have they committed sin, but they even go further into their detestable acts. It continues to read in 2 Kings 17, "Also, the children of Israel secretly did against the Lord their God things that were not right. And they built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and wooden images on every high hill and under every green tree. There they burned incense on all the high places, like the nations whom the Lord had carried away before them. And they did wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger, for they served idols, of which the Lord had said to them, 'You shall not do this thing.'" See, Israel's problem was sin. And even in the midst of their sin, time after time, the Lord would send his servants, the prophets. He would warn the people. He would plead with them. We know the story of Elijah, how Elijah would proclaim a drought, and for 3.5 years it would not rain. How Elijah would go to Mount Carmel and he would do battle, spiritual warfare against the prophets of Baal. And he said, if he is God, let fire come down and consume this offering. And we know how the story goes, is that Elijah repaired the altar. He drenched it with water and he called on the name of the Lord, and the fire of God came down from heaven and consume the whole burnt offering. You see, time after time, the Lord would send his servants, the prophets, to warn and plead with his people to return to the Lord. As we continue to read in 2 Kings 17, it says this, Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all of his prophets, every seer, saying, Turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers and which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. You see, Israel was engaged in lawless behaviors. They were engaged in what you would call chaos, doing whatever floated their boats, doing whatever they thought was right in their own eyes, but yet they had forsaken the law of God, and God would call them to turn back. But it gets worse. Even though God would call them time and time again to return to his statutes, return to his law, return to the light. It says, nevertheless, they would not hear, but stiffened their necks, like the necks of their fathers who did not believe in the Lord their God. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers and his testimonies which he had testified against them. And they followed idols, became idolaters, and went after the nations who were all around them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. And it says, so they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, made for themselves a molded image and 2 calves, made a wooden image, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. And they caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire. They practiced witchcraft and soothsaying, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and removed them from his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah alone. Now, I want you to note this. As we read about King Ahaz, as we read on in the story of Judah, they didn't do any better. The Bible lets us know that Judah followed after the northern kingdom of Israel, and they would do the same detestable acts, but for the sake of the house of David, God would spare Jerusalem. We know furthermore how when the king of Assyria would come upon the land of Judah, how he would try to take Jerusalem, but God would not allow it, because King Hezekiah, though he came from a wicked father, he was righteous in the sight of the Lord. And I want to tell you something. Even though your parents may have been wicked, even though your parents may not have done right, even though your parents might not have set the greatest path for you, understand this. You don't have to be like your parents. You don't have to be caught in darkness. You don't have to be trapped and locked in sin. You can be the difference in your family, and it doesn't really matter what your parents did before you. You have the responsibility of being the difference. See, they didn't do any better, but you know what? King Hezekiah, the Bible lets us know that he was righteous before God, even though his father was one of the most wicked kings for the southern kingdom of Judah. The real issue is that Israel, the northern kingdom, as well as the southern, they were lost in conspiracy. See, this is the true meaning of being lost. It's being in treason against the Lord and a conspiracy with death and darkness, true blindness. I want to give you 3 indicators of what it means to be lost. And I want to transpose this on the story of Israel's exile. Here's the first indicator of what it means to be lost. Direction. You see, when you have no sense of direction, you're lost. See, when you turn every which way except toward God, you are lost. The practice that would signal that truly Israel was lost was when they would seek direction from the dead on behalf of the living. If you're going to necromancers, haven't you lost your direction? If you are turning to magicians and wizards, and you're looking for information from among the dead to direct the path of your life, aren't you lost? When you start looking to astrology to see what the path of your life is and to see what your quote unquote personality type is, when you start looking at these things which God calls an abomination, tell me, haven't you lost your direction? You see, shouldn't a people seek their God? When they tell you to seek those who are mediums and wizards, making strange noises to mimic the dead and to conjure up spirits, listen, you're lost. See, when you turn to the drugs, you're lost. When you turn to the drink, you're lost. When you start seeking direction from dead works, this is the clear indicator that you have lost your direction and you don't know where to go. Because as the prophet says here, you need to realize necromancy and sorcery, that's only the tip of the iceberg. See, when you turn everywhere except toward God, it is a clear indicator of being blind, of being lost in conspiracy. You see, the Bible lets us know that disobedience is as the sin of witchcraft to God. You see, when you turn to sexual immorality, impurity, shameful passions, evil desires, and greed, don't you know that this is the equivalent to idolatry, according to Ephesians chapter 5 and Colossians chapter 3? Don't you know that it's because of these things that the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience? These are indicators that you're lost. These are indicators that you have been blinded by foreign practices that are counter the one true God. But it gets even worse. You see, Hoshea tried to break away from being a vassal to the king of Assyria. But I want to key you in on something. That when you're lost, not only have you lost your direction, but you will be dominated. You see, when we sell ourselves to commit evil, it will always result in being locked. Even though King Hoshea tried to commit a conspiracy against the king of Assyria, the Bible lets us know that the king of Assyria uncovered the conspiracy. And he realized that King Hoshea was trying to break away from the king of Assyria's grip over him. And as a result, the king of Assyria would encircle Samaria and he would besiege it for 3 years. He would capture King Hoshea and he would put him in prison. He would lock him away. When we sell ourselves to committing these evil acts against the Lord, understand, we are locked. Understand this, it's not going to let you leave. Sin is a cruel slave master because when you try to leave, it won't let you go. When you try to walk away from it, you'll find yourself turning back to it. You know, the Bible lets us know in Proverbs 5:22, an evil man is held captive by his own sins. They are ropes that catch and hold him. And Jesus said it even better. He said, most assuredly, I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. See, like I said, sin is a cruel slave master. As Isaiah got these directives, it says, they will pass through the land hard pressed and hungry. And it will be that when they're hungry, they will be enraged and curse their king and their God and look upward. See, you got to get the imagery here. You see, Israel is going to be captured and dominated by the king of Assyria. And he's going to drag them through the land all the way to his own land, to the land of Assyria. And it says they're going to pass through the land hard pressed and hungry, just like the king of Assyria. Sin will dominate you. Sin will drag you into darkness. Sin will shackle you in bonds. And the thing about sin is that it always overpromises. And you can know without a doubt it under delivers. It'll leave you passing through hard pressed and hungry. Every time it promises to satisfy you, you will always leave dissatisfied. Every time it says you will leave with pleasure, you leave with guilt, and yet you cannot break out of the cycle. Listen, sin will drag you down. It will hype you up just to let you fall. Sin is true bondage. And it'll leave you cursing the solution. It'll leave you cursing everything that was right and true. It'll leave you seeing things in such a negative light. And yet deep down, there's something inside of you that craves to be freed from your sin. But the thing about sin is that it will not let you leave. Sin will hold you. Listen, I'm giving you the indicators of what it means to be lost in conspiracy, what it truly means to be lost. And finally, darkness. See, your mind will be darkened. Your perception will be tainted to only see doom and gloom, hopelessness and distress. The Bible says, then they will look to the earth and see trouble and darkness, gloom and anguish, and they will be driven into darkness. You see, when you have no direction and you're dominated by sin, you will be driven into darkness. It'll be gloom and misery where there's no hope of light. It'll be distress and misery around every corner, gloom of anguish and misfortune. The only thing your mind will be trained to see would be the negatives. All your mind will be so consumed and focused on is how bad things are in your life. All your mind will continue to see with the world around you is all of the misfortune, all of the distress, all of the anguish, all of the gloom, the thick darkness that you can't seem to find your way out of. This is what it looks like to be lost. What it looks like is having no direction. What it looks like is being dominated by sin. And what it looks like is being trapped in a thick darkness of chaos, where there's no order, there's only lawlessness, where you're experiencing things that are pretty wild and dark, where you're experiencing misery and distress at every corner, where you're experiencing total blindness. It's like trying to drive on the road with no lines. It's trying to navigate your way through a dark room when you can't see. This is truly what it means to be lost. Lost and without hope. Lost without light. Lost without a place to call home. It's being carried away from your homeland, being stripped, taken by cruel slave masters to be traded, to be sold into another land, to be put under hard labor by a cruel taskmaster. Sin, it won't let you leave, and it'll darken your mind. See, many of us think that the New Testament and the Old Testament are disconnected. But the reality is that sin was the problem all along. See, the reality of this is that Israel faced a spiritual problem of sin, and they experienced a spiritual darkness while they were captives in the land of Assyria. See, that's treason against God and conspiracy with the world. I'm reminded of what the New Testament says. Do not love the world or the things in it. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, all that stuff is passing away. But it's he who does the will of the Father who will abide forever. Listen, when we love the world, when we love the darkness, we make ourselves enemies of God. The New Testament also gives us the understanding that those who walk according to the course of this world are truly walking according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. You see, when we live in this path of sin, of being lost, truly, we have a cruel slave master, the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who works in the sons of disobedience. And this is what makes every single human children of wrath by nature. See, being lost in conspiracy is truly being plunged into chaos and darkness where anything goes, where every desire you have can be filled. Everything you want to do, you can do it because you live without law. It's lawlessness. But I don't want to leave this on a dark note, because this is the same language that surrounds the narrative of creation. You see, the Bible lets us know that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. You see, it was chaotic. It was empty. It was wild and waste. It was darkness, thick darkness hovering over the abyss. It was somewhat of a chaotic situation. But yet, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, even in the darkness, it says, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. See, even in the thick darkness of being lost, the only hope is a divine intervention. The only hope is what we see that comes next in the narrative of creation. Here's what it says. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then God said, "Let there be light." See, Israel was lost in conspiracy. They were driven into darkness. They were in the bondage of sin. They were lost. They were blind. Their minds were darkened. But even in the darkness, understand that God is not finished. God is about to do a great work. And even in your thick darkness, the Lord is about to shine a light. Listen, even though right now it is night, dawn is coming. I tell you, to those to whom this might be a reality, I want you to know the dawn is coming. Light is about to dawn in your darkness, so we can anticipate. Even while we're lost, we can anticipate God to be at work and that He's about to speak light in your darkness. So stay tuned for the next episode, because the light is surely about to dawn. God bless you. I hope this has blessed you, and I hope you tune in next time, because it's about to get pretty bright. So peace. Thank you for tuning in to the show. This was the Holy Fuel Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, but always remember, His word is the fuel for holiness.